welcome back to another episode of the Daft on Draft podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Miller, joined as always by my co-host, Corey Kinnan. And today we are going to talk about some of the more active teams in free agency. And just spoiler alert, we're going to let you know who they are. Even if you're not a fan of these specific teams, we are going to be talking a little bit about the NFL draft and how it pertains to what they did in free agency. So stick around, even if you aren't a fan of these teams, because at the end of the day, we are going to be talking about the Chicago Bears. And the Chicago Bears being fun is fun for the NFL. We're going to be talking about the Minnesota Vikings. We are going to be talking about the Denver Broncos. We are going to be talking about the New England Patriots. And those are the teams we will be discussing here. And before I get started, I would like to ask Corey, who, as you guys can see, if you are watching on YouTube, if you are not, I'm going to tell you, had LASIK. He's gone full Jameis.
Full Jameis.
Never go full Jameis. But how is your eye feeling today? Because I know it was a little bit red yesterday. It doesn't look as bad today.
It's good. It's the blood vessels are going to take a month to heal, they said. So I'll be looking, my right eye will be looking gnarly for a few more weeks here. But I'm doing great, man. This is a sweet spot for us to record 8 o'clock your time, 3:30 or 7:30 your time, 8:30 my or 3:30 my time. This is a sweet spot here. So I'm feeling good.
I'm definitely more awake. It's funny. I'm not necessarily more awake, but I am more awake, but I'm also less awake because I've had, lived an entire day at this point. Because for everybody listening and watching, we recorded it at 4 a.m. for me, and it is now 7:45 p.m. So I'm recording twice on this day. And that is the way that it is. But I kind of enjoy this. I start the day talking about football. I end the day talking about football. And what could be better?
And it keeps us from doing double headers. So we can talk about some stuff that went down today too. So
yes, absolutely. And let's do that. But first, let's get to the Chicago Bears. We've been teasing this. I've been teasing this. I'm so excited about this, man. The Bears. And it's not just about free agency. It's about the trades as well. Going out and getting Joe Thuney, going out and getting Jonah Jackson. They're both making a lot of money. 16 million per for Joe, 17 per for Jonah. These are two really good football players, or good enough football players. I know that Jonah Jackson kind of fell out of favor in LA, but I think they are going absolutely after it and saying, if this doesn't work out offensively, we might have to start fresh at quarterback a lot sooner than a lot of people think. And I think that this is an organization, I think this is a head coach, a front office in Ryan Poles, that they're not going to wait around and see. I think we're going to get, listen, he wasn't as bad as Zach Wilson, and he'll never be as bad as Zach Wilson. But like we were talking about on the podcast yesterday, if you can't learn to play within structure and on time, it doesn't matter if the offensive line is good. It doesn't matter if your wide receivers are talented and can get open. If you can't get the ball out in under 3 seconds consistently to where it needs to be, you are not going to have sustained success at the quarterback position at the NFL level, because no matter how good your offensive line is, offensive line athleticism, talent has not and cannot keep up with the talent that is on defensive lines in the NFL. Those dudes are freaks of nature, and they are only getting technically better as the years go by as well. So what do you think about all the moves that they've made? And do you believe in Caleb Williams moving forward?
Yeah, so I've always had a kind of the flag up about Williams' ability to play in structure. It's why I preferred Drake May last year coming out. And why I had Jaden Daniels pretty close up there too. And I was probably low on Jaden Daniels. Again, I'm not going to write off any sort of rankings after one season of this either. But in theory, this is exactly what the Bears needed to do. We said they have to protect Caleb Williams, and they have spared no expense to do so this offseason. And I think they did it. I wouldn't. No, I'm not going to say that. I was gonna say I wouldn't put it past them to still maybe see them draft a guard. No, they could still probably do it like day 2 because you're getting no guaranteed money on Jonah Jackson's deal. The Rams are paying all that bonus still, and
Mm-hmm.
Joe Tooney is still up there in age. So now they've created an ecosystem where they can bring a guy in and let him learn behind 2 vets. And if one of those vets doesn't pan out, or if one of those vets retires, or in 2 years from now, you still have 2 years of roster control and to plug a guy in there. So I don't think a guard in the second or third round would shock me from the Bears still, but because they've created that ecosystem of using the draft for the future and not today, which I think what every good team really wants to do. But yeah, they spared no expense to protect Caleb Williams. I don't think he has any excuse not to stand in structure and step up into pockets. Again, theoretically on paper, he has no excuse not to stand in there and step up into pockets. We'll see if they go out and they add another receiver on the free agent market with Keenan Allen on free agency. They could go back out and bring Keenan Allen back as well. But with Romo Dunes and DJ Moore, he doesn't have a shortage of weapons. They still have the NFL draft.
And Cole Kmet.
The Cole Kmet too. I'm a little more mum on him than maybe most, but he has people to throw to.
He's still a good tight end.
He is.
He's still a good tight end. I mean, when you look at the pantheon of NFL tight ends, he's easily in the top half of them.
Oh yeah,
as a wide receiving weapon. And so I just didn't want to shortchange his ability to catch the football from that spot, because it is a very nice third weapon for Caleb.
Yeah. And then I also like what they've done on the defensive side of the ball to raise the floor up a little bit, and bring a veteran in along that defensive tackle room, because you have Gervin Dexter, who's played pretty well for the Bears, but they lack a glue guy up front, and I think they got 2. Again, Dayo Dingbo's availability has been a little bit of an issue ever since the Achilles out of Vanderbilt and even into his NFL career. But I think that's a rotational floor player that really comes in. He can play inside out. Again, Dennis Allen's wet dream of a defensive end as well. So I think you come in and you raise the floor. And if they do go out and draft a guy like Mykel Williams, or they draft a guy like Shamar Stewart, or some one of those big bodied edges that we know Dennis Allen is going to be pounding the table for in the draft, you have a guy with some sort of veteran savvy in there, along with Montez Sweat to kind of go along with it. So I think the Bears have done an excellent job to raise their floor, and I think they've raised their floor significantly. How high is their ceiling is however good Caleb Williams can become. That's how high their ceiling is. If Caleb Williams develops into this generational player that some labeled him as the best quarterback prospect since, I mean, but this is the height that we've talked about with Trevor Lawrence since 2021 as well, that he hasn't hit yet. And I think a lot of that has to do with coaching. And we can maybe say the same for Williams, but I do think Williams has to learn to get the ball out on time, to play in structure a lot more than Lawrence has had to and has ever had to at the NFL level. So I think those are a little bit different circumstances, but I think the Bears have done a really good job of elevating the floor and the foundation beneath a rookie quarterback and a new regime, a new coaching staff. So I think they've done a great job, and they haven't spent an ungodly amount of money to do it.
No, they haven't. I mean, when you look at salary cap space, they're still sitting at like nearly 40 million after all the moves that they've made. So it has not been crazy. And I think that's what's really important, because when we saw Jacksonville do this a couple of years ago, it was absurd spending money. I mean, that was overspending in free agency, and that's what we've seen a lot. But I don't think a lot of the deals that we have seen so far in free agency have been outrageous. There have been a few, and those outliers will always exist. I think when you just look at the offensive guard market in general, it's been expensive. But I do think it's not necessarily a bad thing that we are potentially starting to value those interior offensive linemen the way that I believe that they should have been the entire time. And with the severe spike in salary cap, guys are going to get paid. This is, you're muted, but
I was just going to say that it's only going to keep going up too.
Yeah,
so
it's only going to keep going up, and this is looking a lot more like the NBA. In mid-level guys are going to get numbers that you just cannot understand. You can't fathom it. And that's the way that it is going to be from here on out. From a draft perspective, I mean, Ashton Janty's floor, right? Like,
I mean, that's a really good way to raise the
way.
floor of an offense. Yeah, just go get a guy who can have the ball 20 times a game.
The other thing I will say is they kind of have a manufactured touch guy in DJ Moore, but I do think when you look at Moore as well, I think that his best use is as a 3-level wide receiver. I don't think that he is, because he was a very much like a manufactured touch guy when he was at Maryland. And I think he developed into a legitimate 3-level wide receiver. Roman Jones is obviously a very, very high floor. I don't know about the ceiling. I honestly don't.
I'm with you there.
And so for me, I think you could even look at wide receiver too and not worry about it. If Tet's there, I mean the NFL doesn't really seem to like Luther Burden very much, but Matthew Golden as a guy who can go out and win the football, and that's something that Rome does pretty well as well.
Yeah.
But you can use Rome as a little bit of a bigger slot.
Yeah.
And you could have Golden on the outside where he really does a good job winning along the sideline and showing sideline awareness and stuff like that. And it really looks like his stock is rising to the point where you could see him in the top 15. If it were down to him or Janty, you would go Janty, right? Even though he's a running back. Or are we doing the positional thing where the value of taking a wide receiver overrides it because then you're paying much less when it comes to getting the value out of that position?
I'm fine with overriding positional value. If you have a conviction about a player and you can get them immediate touches, I honestly don't care. I'm probably leaning Janty here. I would struggle with Tet, I think, a little bit because I think him and Rome move a little bit of the same way.
Yeah.
And would their route trees and what they're able to do as a sort of an X and big slot would overlap too much. But I do like the idea of having some Z slot versatility between DJ Moore and Matthew Golden, and some Z slot versatility between DJ Moore and Luther Burden. And if you don't want to manufacture touches for DJ Moore and let him become a true route runner and win at every level of the field, I think Luther Burden would be a tremendous fit for that offense as well. But I would probably lean Ashton Jincy here. They could very well go defensive side of the ball, though.
I was going to say, let me throw a wild card out there. If Shamar Stewart's on the board, I can see Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen might go and wrestle Ben Johnson for that card.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that could happen as well. I think their defensive tackle room, but outside of Mason Graham, I don't think he's fallen that far anyway. So I don't think there's gonna be a defensive tackle on the board. I like their linebackers enough that like Jahad Campbell doesn't really move for them.
Their secondary is really good. Their secondary is really good.
So I think Shamar Stewart is the only defensive player here, or Mykel Williams. Teams have Mykel Williams preferences as well because he's big-bodied, alien build, explosive, the same kind of stuff. But I think he's just incredibly stiff. I do think it's probably one of those two guys if they go defensive side of the ball.
I agree. Now let's move on from the Chicago Bears. Let's stay in the division though. The Minnesota Vikings went crazy today, or yesterday, if you guys are listening to this or watching this. The day that we recorded, they went nuts. They went out and they re-signed Brett Rippon. Crazy. Love that for them. I am a huge Brett Rippon fan. Shout out Mark Schofield as well. But they've done a lot, man. Went out, got Ryan Kelly. Went out, got Will Fries. So the throwing assets at the offensive line. They went out and got Isaiah Rodgers on an inexpensive deal, 27 years old. Re-signed Aaron Jones, re-signed Byron Murphy, signed Jonathan Allen, making moves. But from a draft perspective, I don't think they've really done anything to address the needs that we had for them going into it.
Yeah. I think Defensive tackle was one that I was like, oh, they could easily take a DT. And I think they still could, but with Hargrave and with Allen, and I think they like Taki Taimani as a nose behind Harrison Phillips. I think their depth is a little okay there. Excuse me. From a draft perspective, even though they signed Isaiah Rodgers and they brought back Byron Murphy, I think they could go a longer, like, bail 3 corner here
Yeah.
still. I think they could very easily go with a Savon Revel or something like that here at 24. Again, even with re-signing Aaron Jones, I think that this is still a team that could take a Caleb Johnson at 24 as well. So I think this is very firmly a team that could go corner still, despite making moves there, or running back still. 13 million guaranteed. So after this year, he's got $3 million in guaranteed money. That they could very easily move off of that if they wanted to. And the running backs behind Aaron Jones are still just Cam Akers and Ty Chandler. So I do think like a Caleb Johnson double-headed monster, two-headed monster attack as a rookie, and then move on from Aaron Jones after a year, or bring him back if he'll take those limited guarantees is a solid option here. But I'm probably looking at corner or running back now for them. Brian O'Neill just redid his contract.
Yeah.
So if they want to draft an offensive tackle for the future, I guess they could go for that as well.
When I look at their roster here, I'm looking at outside linebacker as well. Like as an edge rusher, I know that they really love Andrew Van Ginkel. And Van Ginkel played really well for them last year. And Jonathan Grenard is a decent player, kind of a decent floor, low ceiling guy. Dallas Turner, is he going to be able to turn it on? And how much of a leash are they going to get there? I'm just very firmly a believer that you can never have enough guys that rush the passer. And so for me, I even think, somebody like a
would be a fun Jalen Walker spot.
Yeah, I mean, if Jalen Walker ends up landing that far, I actually really like that. Like Ivan Pace is kind of like Jalen Walker is kind of like Ivan Pace. You know what I mean? Like just crash downhill as hard as you can.
Bowling ball downhill. Yep.
Yeah, but do you want him to play linebacker? Do you want him to play outside linebacker?
He could be very Van Ginkelish, though, is what I'm thinking there too. Very Van Ginkelish, depending on the long-term outlook there.
Yeah, and then I mean, when you look at the safety is the big one for me personally. Harrison Smith is 75 years old, and Josh Metellus ain't keeping you from signing anybody. So I think that is at 24. Both our guys are probably gone. Mm-hmm. Is it too early for any of the other safeties in this class?
Oh yeah, for me personally, it's a huge drop off between Starks, him and Worry, and then Watts, who I'd slot in there at 3. We both have top 10 grades in this class on those top 2 safeties, and then Watts is a late second round grade for me. So that'd be a big jump in my opinion to come get Xavier Watts there or something like that.
All right, moving on. The Denver Broncos, and we're not going to touch too much on this. We just want to kind of appreciate what the Denver Broncos have done culturally on the defensive side of the ball. Going out and getting Talanoa Hufanga. We both absolutely adore that move. If he is healthy, he is one of the most fun defensive players in the NFL. They also re-signed DJ Jones defensively, and we both raved about that deal yesterday as well. So we just really enjoy the identity of the Denver Broncos and what they brought. And I was very skeptical last year. Yeah. I've been a firm Sean Payton might be a little overrated. And after last year, seeing, first of all, what he was able to do with Bo Nix. And I called it from the very start. I said, he's going to see Bo Nix. He's going to absolutely love Bo Nix. And he's going to probably overdraft Bo Nix. That's exactly what ended up happening. And then the results, I thought it could work. But I had no idea that it could work that quickly. And I had no idea after those first couple of weeks where it looked like it was going to be a complete dumpster fire that would be able to turn around that fast. And so for me, the culture seems to be there in Denver for this to be a team that isn't nearly as talented as Kansas City. Well, outside of quarterback, but like, are they going to be able to compete with Kansas City or with LA? From a talent perspective, maybe not, but if you have the right pieces in place, if you're able to find the glue pieces, the mid-level guys to fit your scheme, fit your culture, be good locker room guys, it's a team that could fight and beat up those other teams in the AFC West, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out.
Yeah, Jay Greenlaw's the other signing there as well.
Yes, I did forget about Dre Greenlaw.
That
Yes.
is a really good identity fit there with Vance Joseph as well. So I like this team a lot because all offseason, Sean Payton has, I mean, he went around Super Bowl Radio Row saying, we need a joker. I want a joker. I want to play like he wants somebody to transform his offense in a manufactured touch / just let me get the ball in this guy's hand kind of way and see what happens. And by stocking up on the defensive side of the ball, a unit that was already really good, they can wind back and do that. And you're plugging in DJ Jones along a defensive front still where they are bringing everybody back who played really well. Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers was a hell of an ad on the trade market for the Jets last year. So they have a firm identity on defense, and I do think they're missing that one guy. Whether that you think that's a tight end in Colson Loveland, or whether you think like if the NFL is really that low on Luther Burden, like that's a guy they have skyscrapers at wide receiver who can win at the catch point. Devon Vele has been much better than I anticipated him being. Cortland Sutton is as consistent as ever. Marvin Mims, even though he's not a skyscraper, developed into a take the top off slot threat down the seam unbelievably well last year, as well as a return specialist for them. If you can go get a joker, and if the NFL is dumb enough to let Luther Burden fall that far, I think that's a great fit. We could be talking about Caleb Johnson or Marion Hampton here. We could be talking about Colson Loveland here. There are a variety of guys who you can find ways to get the footballs in their hands in space, or in a case of a running back, trusted to hold on to the football 15 to 18 times a game, and really elevate Bo Nix even further. As far as Bo Nix is concerned, I think he's way more athletic. I'm going to caveat this by saying I think he's way more athletic than Mac Jones and has a bigger arm than Mac Jones has. I anticipated his floor would be high coming into the NFL level. My question still remains: are we already near that ceiling? Is his floor? Or how close are his floor and his ceiling? But if he runs back 3,700 yards and however many touchdowns he threw, like he did last year, or like you'll take that year in and year out. Like that's top 12 quarterback play year in and year out. So I even if the floor and the ceiling are close with Bo Nix, like as long as he's not a dummy, which is unbelievable that he's become the player he is, because that's exactly who he was at Auburn, was just this mindless buffoon with a football in his hand. Then as long as he's not a dummy, like a coach will take borderline 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns every year. So this team, they're rolling. They're rolling.
They sure are. And the last team we're going to talk about was not rolling last year, but we talked about him a little bit. We talked about Drake May at the beginning of the episode here. Mm-hmm. They went out and are spending money. First of all, I know Josh Dobbs isn't going to play for them, but I like that signing because Josh Dobbs is the kind of guy that you really want in your locker room. I think that is a nice veteran signing for them. Mac
tells
Hollins,
me they're going to trade Joe Milton as well. But
yeah, Mac Hollins, we talked about him pre-show. You charted him and Josh Allen, and was pleasantly surprised with what Mac Hollins did in Buffalo last year. And I just, from a casual perspective, was very, very interested in what he did last year as well. They went out and got Morgan Moses to play right tackle for them. And I know he's 39 years old. He's 34, but he is up there. It's a very inexpensive deal. So you aren't going out and forcing your hand to not take a tackle, in round 2 if one is there for you. I don't think you're going to take a right tackle with number 4 unless you're going to go out and draft my guy Armin Membau at 4, which
Could be on the
maybe the
table.
NFL does, but I think that there's going to be better options there. And the one better option there for me that is staring me in the face and I can't get rid of is Abdul Carter. And I just think everything that they're doing right now, they went out, they got Robert Spillane, which was a really nice signing for them at the second level. Milton Williams at the first level. I think adding a guy like Milton Williams who can shoot gaps in the interior and take off a little bit of pressure from a guy like Abdul Carter, that's a 1-2 punch that you can really hang your hat on the defensive line. So I like what they have done in free agency. They still have an absolutely asinine amount of money that they can spend, $85 million in effective cap space still, according to Over the Cap. And that's with, signing Carlton Davis, who we talked about. We like a little bit scheme specific, a little bit stiff, but a really good football player.
Yeah. I like what the Patriots have done. I'm a little like on the this is the team that just spent more than everybody else, though. Like that team never works out when they just go out and they spend a bunch of money. And at the end of the day, I think we're still leaving with the same needs that
Yeah, I
we
mean,
entered.
but outside of I mean, Davis and Williams, the Williams contract is big for
Right.
a halftime player. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For
Yeah.
sure.
And I will say this is a team that just lacked.
Yeah, they weren't very good. They weren't very talented last year. It's still going to take time.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. So I mean, they did go and they did add talent. I mean, Harold Landry doesn't move me, but I think that's a deal they could get out of after a year when they realize he has no speed to power profile, which Mike Vrabel probably knows that, but at least that's a familiar player.
Mm-hmm.
But I do like the Robert Spillane signing. I really do enjoy it. The Morgan Moses. I get it, and I enjoy a lot of it. But as far as from a draft perspective, they entered free agency with a need at left tackle, with a need at wide receiver, and they're leaving free agency with a need at left tackle, with a need at wide receiver. So it seems pretty apparent that those are the two big moves there.
Yeah, I can't imagine they really are looking much of anywhere else. It stinks because I'm wondering if it means they're going to force themselves into drafting Will Campbell at number 4.
I wouldn't put it past Mike Vrabel. Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him. I mean, if you go out and you draft a Zach Martin quality guard, even if it fails at tackle, though, like I think that's fine. I think it's fine for this team. Because like I think I'd rather do that than take Ted McMillan at 4.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and if I think in their ideal world they would take Travis Hunter and play a wide receiver because Travis Hunter wants to play wide receiver. So like that's an interesting. If Travis Hunter gets to 4, I think they're splitting the card up. But does he get past the Giants? Does he get past the Titans? So like that's the kind of the conversation here. But if Travis Hunter's there at 4, I think the Patriots are screaming up to the podium with that card with his name on it.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. And that's it. Those are the teams that we're going to talk about here. In, out, 30 minutes. It's exactly what we want. It's exactly what we need. We will be back on Thursday with either a mailbag on Thursday or Friday. And we will figure out. I mean, we have no clue what's going to happen with the rest of free agency. So we might have to talk about more stuff by the time that Thursday rolls around. But we will get your questions. We will answer your questions at some point this week. We love doing mailbags. And I think when we look at everything else, I think next week is probably a good time to possibly revisit a mock draft with the new team needs after the first and partially the second wave of free agency. Corey, the one other position I would like to bring up is running back for New England. Obviously not at 4, but
Yeah.
a little further down the road.
Stevenson just got that big deal last year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do need a little more diversity there. I think
Yeah,
that would be like round 3. Like that would be a
yeah,
good Jaden Blue spot to pair
yeah,
up Jaden Blue and Ramondre Stevenson.
yeah. I mean, and Ramondre is a great wide receiver out of the backfield. You would like to add a little bit of juice there, and
Mhm.
maybe they thought that Antonio Gibson could be that guy, but unfortunately, Antonio Gibson never rounded out to be that guy in the NFL. That is all we have for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, make sure that you guys are giving us 5 stars. Make sure if you are on YouTube that you are engaging. I need to start looking at the comments more on YouTube and answering questions and spatting back and forth about my bad takes that you guys are calling out. So remember, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I love you. Goodbye.